What is that time of the program where we turn our attention over the markets? And joining us now at Briggs Feed Yard is Mr. Mike Briggs himself. Mike, good to see you.
Mike, good to see you.
Well, I'm sure you had a bit of a challenging January, but how about this February
January
weather?
was awful, but how about this? No coat in February. I'm all for it.
Okay, 2024. How's it feel to be a feedlot operator right now?
January, it was bad. That's about as bad a weather as I've seen since the early 80s. It was just horrible. Lost a lot of cattle, just annihilated the feed yard, and it was disappointing because things were going so well. I was bemoaning to friends the other day. It's so discouraging when just 3 weeks of bad weather wipes out the work of 6 or 9 months. You know, we're just getting to where we're marketing some of our grass cattle, so you got a 9-month deal in there, and 3 weeks just wipes it all out. I was going to make money like a packer, but not anymore.
What was the biggest challenge? You're referencing that cold snap and the winter conditions.
Well, for me personally, I couldn't do anything to help the animals. There was so much, it rained before it, so it was muddy underneath. It did not freeze. Got so much snow on top of it then, and then it got so cold, you couldn't take an implement out there because you'd break the implement because it was so cold, and you just couldn't do anything for these poor cattle. They just had to stand there and take it, and that was really difficult. And we're working on it hard now, but that's, you know, as somebody that raises animals for a living, and, you know, my job is caring for animals, and not being able to do something for them of real substance really bothered me. Well, but it's left us with a lot of work to do going into the spring.
Yeah, page has kind of turned here as we enjoy this nice February weather. You and I talking here on Wednesdays. Look at the cattle markets. There's a lot of optimism right now.
A lot of optimism. I think the cattle markets, maybe I'm wrong, the markets are supposedly never wrong. We seem a little out of step here. We've kind of run this thing up during a time period where beef demand is terrible. January and February are terrible for beef demand. Now, I read this. I have no documentation other than that I read that they're saying we are at our apex of short numbers right now. Find that hard to believe. I think late spring, early summer is going to be worse. But if we're at this small of a level right now, it's going to get real interesting. My nutritionist told me in 8 years, he's never seen this many empty pens at feed yards. So I guess it's coming. There's a lot of things that are going to happen because of this. The most thing that's interesting to me is what's going to happen Friday. We get a cattle on feed report. Market's already going up in anticipation. It's probably going to be bullish. The question is, how bullish is it going to be? You're going to see extremely small placements because of that god-awful winter in January. Are those placements so low that you actually drag the cattle on feed under 100%? Because if you drag it under 100% this early, it's not coming back over that for quite a while. And that's going to pinch consumers.
Obviously, you are bullish sentiment in the cattle markets because of those factors you point out.
I'm cautious, though, but go ahead.
Okay. Over the next 6 months, how high could we get at this point with those factors?
To me, the big deal is the economy and what the person that we have that allegedly has the title of president is going to do, because this economy, on my mind, is on thin ice. Now, people say, well, why would you say that? Well, because employment is starting to stumble. Interest rates are not going to come down. Consumers are getting pressed. There's still inflation. Well, you want to see inflation, it's coming in beef. And that is what's going to hurt. You cannot run this board to 210 or 220 like some people say. In this economy, people aren't going to have the money to pay for it, I don't think. But we've said that for years. We've said years and years they'd never pay for it. They'd never pay for it. And look where we are now. So I could be completely wrong.
Conversation that I'm sure is going to continue to develop in the cattle industry right now is beef imports. USDA predicting record imports of beef into the U.S. because of the high prices we see domestically. Your thoughts there?
Well, producers don't like it because they're like, well, just pay me more for mine. Well, you've got to worry about the American consumer, so you're going to have to bring some of that beef in. Now, everybody needs to remember that's typically not steaks and roasts and things like that. That's meat, that's lean beef for trimmings, stuff to blend into burger. You know, it's just a fact of life. There's nothing you can do about it. It's typical supply demand.
The January inventory report comes out. That one comes out twice a year. It gives people a sentiment of how many cattle are truly out there. We're at historic lows dating back several decades at this point. As you look at the herd rebuilding process, we just came from the cattle con. Everybody has their thoughts on how we can rebuild better or differently. Where do you see winners and losers in the cattle supply chain?
Well, the winner at this point is going to be the rancher, in my mind, provided it rains, because he's going to get extremely high record prices for what he raises. And that's great for him. He's also going to pay record prices for replacement females and record prices for bulls. So I think they're going to be good. The Packer's going to be the biggest loser right now, because and what I don't want to see is it gets so bad that they start closing plants. You know, these new plants that are trying to be built, they're starting at the absolute worst time. So I don't know what happens to that. You'd hate to have them just get leveled or whatever. So I think it's going to be really difficult moving forward for the Packer. He in turn is going to put downward pressure on us. He's going to try to keep us in a headlock as best he can. Demand's going to be the pull through of the product is what's going to determine how well this works or how bad it gets. If there's no demand on the other end, we're going to get crushed.
Expected to help profit margins over the next year, lower feed prices, in particular corn. USDA projecting $4.80 here the first part of the year, then $4.40 is their average for what they expect corn prices. How about hay supplies? How are you sitting here in Nebraska?
You know, that has not been an issue this year. You had enough rain in western Nebraska. They had enough hay, so they weren't drawing hay away from this part of the country. I've had no problem with hay. In fact, the price of hay has continued to go down. Now, it's still too expensive compared to corn, but it's gone down considerably, and it's not really an issue.